I really have to boil it down to its most basic elements, then I would say that it was the fall of 2017 and the headache that changed my life. That is the reason for why I have this channel and why I'm talking to you. Welcome to This Life Reconsidered. My name's Jenina. So here's the deal. I figured that before I started populating this channel with all of these videos that I've already have started to design and started to map out to put out into the universe, I thought it would make a whole lot of sense for me to put out a little bit of an origin story. Now, I've seen feedback on YouTube that doesn't necessarily support this before you've built a following, but because of the nature of my channel and because of the fact that my story and the reason for it is a little unique, I thought it would make sense to ground you in the why so that everything that comes after this video doesn't feel like it's completely out of left field, but instead that it ladders up to one master vision and why it is that I've decided that I want to start talking about these kinds of topics. Now, all that said, and that I've explained my logic, I'm gonna tell you a little bit of a story. So in the fall of 2017, life was literally as close to perfect for me as it could possibly be. And that's not even an exaggeration. I had the job that I wanted. I was in an amazing, wonderful, healthy relationship. I had just landed the apartment of my dreams. And I was training for my third half marathon. I was healthy. I was thrilled. Like, I was exactly where I had dreamed that I wanted to be at that juncture in my 30s. And it made everything that I had been through before then, and all of the drama and all the insanity, you know, all the climbing and all the sacrifice I went through, especially for my career, because I've always been very, very passionate when it comes to my professional endeavors. It made all of that stuff worth it because I was exactly where I needed to be. But when you're kind of going through all of this, it's hard to kind of accept when things kind of completely throw you off course, which is what happened to me. You know, I had gone to sleep after another long day of work, working, not a big deal. And when I had woken up in the morning, and it should have been an average morning, but I had the worst headache of my life. And there's nothing that could describe the pain that I was feeling that morning. But because all I did was assume that it was just a really, really brutal headache, I just decided to sleep it off and didn't even bother to fret with it. Probably just took some aspirin and dismissed it. And after that, I decided I was going to sleep, and it just wouldn't go away. But the day had had almost passed, and finally, after talking to my boyfriend, now husband, talking to him, he was like, you know what, hon, I'm coming over. Let's just kind of get you checked out. And he took me to the hospital. When I got there, hours had passed, and before I got to see, but it feels like it was hours. Now that I think about it, it probably wasn't as long. But after they had run all of these tests, and ultimately, after all of that, the doctor tells me that I've had a stroke in my sleep. and which didn't make any sense because they ran all the vitals, and I had never even so much as had the chicken pox. I'd never been sick. The whole thing was just really like completely disturbing and alarming. And I remember kind of being petrified and overwhelmed and sad and scared and confused and in denial. I think I went through this entire roller coaster of emotions. And after that particular moment, and once I was admitted into the hospital just so they keep me for observation, and doctors wanted to make sure that they went over every test because a lot of it was just completely random and very confusing, and they couldn't really completely agree on what the triggers could have been. The whole thing was a nightmare. I felt like I was literally living my largest nightmare. But what was really fascinating was because I was in such a confused and stressed and emotional state, I almost never allowed myself to immediately in those days accept what had happened to me. Like I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. I need to go back to work. And which was such a screwy way to kind of approach something like that, because as opposed to allowing myself to kind of be sick and get treatment and get all the answers that I needed, I was in denial that was happening to me because things like that didn't happen to me, and things that I couldn't fix didn't happen to me. And that was a really, really difficult thing for me to accept. In the weeks and months that came after that completely surreal experience that I went through, I started kind of going through, so after going through speech therapy and then going through all these doctor's appointments and screens, I realized and started to kind of really take a hard look at the way and at the emotions that I held really deeply in the days that I was in the hospital. Like I realized, like, as opposed to focusing on my self-care and as opposed to kind of being thrilled that I was alive and that doctors were optimistic about how things were going to shake out for me, I realized that I completely missed the boat here to not only learn from everything, but to be grateful that I got through that and that everything was eventually really going to be fine. Anyway, that entire experience and living it and just even thinking about it again really reminds me that and kind of even reignites why it is that I decided after that moment I wasn't going to not only just kind of waste life moments, but that I was going to be much more intentional on a couple different levels. I was going to focus on trying to learn from moments as I'm living them, because there's something to be said about not processing a moment when you're going through it. And I realized that I probably could have moved through my recovery even slightly faster if I had been much more accepting and understanding of what I was living through. So instead of kind of living in that level of denial, I told myself that I was going to be much more focused on learning from the moments that I'm living through. And I made sure that not only was I going to be learning, but that I was going to be really appreciative and grateful and focus on trying to shift my mindset, because I was, always focusing on the negative and not really trying to kind of, get the positive perspective. And then on top of all of this, because I had been such a workaholic and had been so career driven, I realized that I was starting to even though I was at a great point in my life, I was also starting to wear down, like, professionally, and like I was giving myself to work, but I wasn't taking care of me. So with all of these insights and all of these realities completely hitting me all at the same time, I told myself that if I was going to be fortunate to get through all this, and that if I was being given a second chance to heal and completely rebound, and my doctors were really, really positive, then I was going to make sure that I didn't waste that shot, and that I was going to extract all my learning from them. So with all of that, I started to really just kind of take a much more of inward look at myself. And that was when I had started doing some personal things for myself, like writing and keeping journals and things like that, which I had done before this, but now it was a little different, because I was being much more reflective and also approaching it with a different lens. My goal was to make sure I was learning and not wasting the opportunities. And I would say through all of those things, that I also wanted to make sure that I was providing a little bit of a resource for other people, that when they feel like they're a little stuck or need help with like mental clarity, that I could leave a little piece of that. So I started a podcast, and I even had a couple stories picked up. I had written a personal essay for a really popular women's magazine. I'll leave the link below, and had even had the story featured on TV. And those were really meaningful moments for me, and the outpour of affection and understanding and compassion that I had received was really, really great. And I started to embark on this personal journey to make sense of all the moments that we live. And that's what This Life Reconsidered is all about. So if you're wondering what my credibility is, and I'm putting air quotes, and what makes me an expert, what makes me an expert is survival. You know, not only I'm a stroke survivor, but I also am just kind of committed to really learning, and because of everything I went through, I can look at things much more logically and with a much cleaner set of perspective, because I'm not letting the cloud bother me. I think sometimes we get so consumed in even the tough stuff that we're living in that we don't bother to try and figure out the simple logic that's probably staring us in the face. And that's what This Life Reconsidered is all about. So the videos here are all going to be designed to be part motivational, part inspirational, part logic, and they're just different ways of looking at things. And I'm hoping that you'll join me on this journey in trying to unpack the world that surrounds us, and trying to ultimately learn from it and use it for self-improvement. This Life Reconsidered, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one.